The Empirical Energy Podcast blows open the silent revolution, rewriting the rules of global energy markets. Measured, verified energy is no longer an alternative. It's becoming the gold standard. We dive deep with the producers, traders, consultants, and renegades driving this seismic shift. Step inside the raw mechanics of how verification and blockchain-fueled trading are dismantling the old systems and creating a future where alternative energy doesn't just compete, it takes over. This is the movement of reshaping energy as we know it, bold, unstoppable, and just getting started. Here is your host, Mark Smith.
Hey everybody, this is Mark Smith, host of the Empirical Energy Podcast, where we look at the intersection of energy, AI, and blockchain. I'm here with Thomas Fox, who's the president of Highwood Emissions. Welcome, Thomas.
Thanks, Mark. Awesome to be here.
Yeah, so Thomas, I actually first met Thomas on an EPA methane online summit. And I remember in particular because you either came on right before CDPHE, the Colorado regulator, or right after. I can't remember. But I seem to remember in talking about this particular model that you had created. And you were talking about this model. No, I think you came on first, maybe. And then right away, CDPHE says, oh, yeah, we accept this model, like as proof of equivalency of, LDAR. I'm like, oh, I so need to talk to this guy, Thomas, because he's got all the cred that we need to, get the, what now we got with, our CDPHE Alt-AIM, which is our alternative instrument measurement method. And since then, we've also worked with Thomas's company, hired those guys to help us get our EPA approval, which we got. Thanks again for helping us get the Colorado approval and the EPA approval, which I think is going to be golden for us right now. We're going through state by state, and many of the states are going to just recognize the EPA approval as approval for their state regulations. So thanks again for that. Thanks for your help.
Yeah, thanks for believing in us.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how we got connected. Plus, we've done a bunch of webinars together. I think we did a webinar on OGMP and stuff like that. But anyway, I'm really curious to get caught up on, because you've made a lot of progress towards some software that you've been creating and things like that. So I'm really curious. Tell us about your background. How in the world did you decide you're going to invest a lot of time and energy in, methane mitigation and carbon accounting and all this kind of stuff. And I'd like to know about your background, and then kind of give us that aha moment when you decided, hey, we should create some software.
Yeah, the software came later. We've been at this for a while. I started my PhD working on methane stuff almost 10 years ago now. And at the beginning, it was some of what you were describing. What are the different technologies out there? How do they work? When is the best circumstance environment to deploy them? How do we get the right data that we need in order to make decisions effectively? And kind of working at the interface of policy. How do we get these new technologies approved? How do we develop risk tolerant policy that enables innovation? And the technology side of it, as well as working at it from the perspective of industry. What are the technologies that operators actually like and want to use and engage with the data? And so the early days were very LDAR focused, and we started Highwood about 5 years ago after I finished school. And we actually started as a consulting business, and we were just trying stuff and we weren't really sure what was going to work and what wasn't. It was just my co-founder Jessica and I, who came from Shell. And we were I think our first projects we asked for like $75 an hour Canadian to do some work, see throw stuff at the wall, and things have evolved quite a bit since then. We had this vision at the beginning of we're going to get broader and broader in terms of the services that we offer around methane to the oil and gas industry, but in fact we've been getting more and more specific in terms of the offerings that we provide. And that trajectory has led us from technology and detection and repair to developing measurement-informed inventories. And the reason for that is that, there's been a lot of development in voluntary initiatives like OGMP, Veritas, MIQ, as well as regulations now that are emerging like the methane rule and the Colorado Reg 7 that are requiring operators to move from some of the historical generic emission factor-based estimation methods for accounting for methane emissions to more empirical estimates that require measurement. The problem is that's really, really tricky. It's a bit of art, it's a bit of science, and the science is still evolving. And so we kind of started supporting clients internationally in building these measurement-informed inventories from a consulting perspective. And then we realized that, a lot of this is still, a human endeavor. There's lots of project management involved. There's lots of kind of conversations and decisions around, what are we going to do next? What are the biggest issues? What are our gaps? How are we going to get the right data? But a lot of it could be automated. And that's, about 2 years ago, we started building software. We had built different tools and softwares along the way. Some have worked and some haven't worked as well or remained viable. But this one so far is getting quite a bit of traction. And what we did is we said, listen, we're not gonna write any code until we have kind of a customer base established. So we put together a steering committee to guide the development of this software. And the oil and gas companies that we were working with who operate internationally were saying, yeah, we've got systems for calculating our inventories, for managing the data. We've got IT departments. They can do a lot of this methane data management stuff. But the piece we don't really know is this reconciliation side of it. And how do we build measurement-informed inventories? There's so much confusion in the space on this specific topic. So let's stand together behind a solution so that we can build something credible that aligns with the existing protocols and kind of all invest in that. So that's what we've done. We launched our software in January, and now we're officially a software company and moving down that path.
So, listen, I can attest to the whole narrow focus. I mean, again, when I saw you on the EPA deal and you were talking about LDAR SIM, which is, I think, what you got even your PhD using, and I thought of it, okay, it must be a system or must have some modeling there, which it did. And then hearing, the Colorado regulator said, oh yeah, we accept LDAR SIM. I'm like, okay, this is perfect. So yeah, that narrow focus of, I think Thomas Fox can help us get approved with this alternative technology approval. So yeah, that narrow focus. Now, in this new thing, you said you started, let's say, with some early adopters and stuff. Is there any, what's the update on that kind of stuff? And let's also describe the problem a little bit, because you talk about OGMP and a reconciliation. So just for this audience, what is that reconciling what exactly?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start with the problem and give you a few examples of some of the traction that we're getting. So the challenge is that there's a lot of different ways to estimate methane emissions. You can do calculations based on factors, activity and emission factors. You can do engineering type equations based on known activities. You can measure at the source level. You can incorporate those into your factors and have company-specific data. And then you can measure at different spatial and temporal scales. You can have continuous monitoring. You can have aerial flyovers. There's all kinds of ways of doing these measurements. And you can never have complete omniscience. So you're never going to be able to measure every individual molecule that was ever emitted from every one of your sites. It's kind of like modeling, estimating reserves in oil and gas. We're trying to estimate a fundamentally unknowable number. And so there's basically a cost benefit exercise that has to happen of, what are we going to focus on measuring? What are the highest risk sites? What are the highest risk source categories? And what are some of the sources that maybe measurement isn't the best approach? So we're going to use calculated estimates instead, because the engineering estimates are probably more reliable for those source categories. And so the challenge really is getting good data from different sources and weaving it together into a credible, consistent, auditable narrative that aligns with protocols that, frankly, are still largely in development. There's a number of companies who are reporting to OGMP 2.0 at level 5 now. I think there's over 100 companies who have joined the initiative. But the requirements from UNEP for how to report to OGMP are evolving, and so it's really hard to do. And figuring out it's effectively been described as a science experiment, and figuring out that science experiment, you could hire half a dozen people full time to work on it and do a research paper every year for your reporting. Or you could get together, join a group of operators to align behind a consistent solution for how to do this, establish a foundation, a methodology, and then build on that foundation year over year, which is what we're doing. So the challenge has really been in the consistency, in the scalability of this kind of novel work. And then ensuring that it's auditable, because with the new EU methane rule in particular, there's a requirement for independent verification to a reasonable level of assurance. And that auditability requirement is very challenging to define, first and foremost, because there's no, to date, as of this moment, there are no real audit protocols for example, OGMP 2.0. Veritas has published audit guidance. But these are some of the challenges that led customers to want to work together with us on this problem. And it's frankly not solved. Like, we're still working on this. We're still testing things out. We launched the initial version of EIP in January, and OGMP reporting was due, I think 2 weeks ago now, just under 2 weeks ago on a Saturday. And so that was our first basically test run of the new system. We had reported with clients in the past with our consulting teams. This was the first time that we supported clients using EIP as part of to automate some of the L5 and the reconciliation requirements. And that's the name of the software, Emissions Intelligence Platform. Yeah, thanks for calling me out on acronym soup. And so we supported eight companies in some capacity in their reporting. And we do have a number of SaaS users now who are in the system, building out their own level 5 inventories, evaluating our 100 pages of technical documentation, thinking about what it'll look like for this to be auditable, providing feedback, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's been great. We're seeing a definitive need, especially on the scalability and consistency piece in the market, and we think we're onto something, but still TBD. We're waiting to get feedback from UNEP, so we'll see how we fare, but we're pretty confident in the reports that we submitted this year.
So yeah, given that there isn't a sort of third-party certifier system out there, it's kind of, you turn it in, and then after a certain amount of time, they just come back, say, we accept it or we don't, or I don't know what the feedback mechanism loop is on that.
Yeah, UNEP has an internal review process for OGMP 2.0. So we're anticipating that it could take a month to several months for them to review the approximately 150 submissions that they've received. It's a mountain of work. Like, a number of our reports were dozens, if not many dozens of pages, including tons of data, and then accompanied by technical documentation as well. And the challenge, I think, for UNEP right now is that everyone who's reporting is using, there's principles-based guidance for how to do OGMP reporting. But when you turn that guidance into specific workflow and math, you're going to end up basically with 150 different approaches. And so it's going to take them some time to evaluate all those different reports that they've received and get their feedback. But there were some data points that came out of last year's reporting. I think of the I can't remember exactly the number of assets from the companies reporting at level 5 through maybe 100 assets reporting at level 5. 70% of them were unable to reconcile because the reconciliation is just effectively reconcile because that process is very, very challenging. So it's we'll see this year if the bar stays the same, or if there's even more stringent kind of expectations from the team. But it does beg the question of, what does this look like when it has become reasonable assurance? Because it appears as though the EU is going to be expecting EY or KPMG or others to independently provide an audit of these measurement informed inventories, and it's really hard to say what that will look like at this point, or even if the expertise exists to perform those audits.
So a couple points of clarification. So level 5, versus let's say level 4 and reconcile. So what does that mean?
There's 5 levels. A lot of operators are at level 3. You can think of level 3 as equivalent to kind of your historical EPA subpart W submission. So this is a fairly detailed bottom-up inventory resolved to the source category level that uses generic assumptions to calculate that inventory. Moving to level 4 requires that you basically supplement that source level bottom-up inventory with source level measurements or empirical data or representative estimates that are applicable to the company. So you may go out and develop your own emission factor-free fugitives. You may perform your own flare destruction efficiency measurements. You may do stack testing, and so on and so forth. Moving from level 4 to level 5 is where things get really hairy, because in level 5, you're not only reporting a company-specific bottom-up inventory, but you're also performing site-level measurements. And then you're deriving with those site-level measurements and the bottom-up inventory what we call a level 5 inventory, which is, it could be just your level 4 inventory that's cross-referenced and validated by your site-level measurements. But in many cases, it's a hybrid inventory that combines the most credible pieces from your different estimation techniques. So it could be that you use a top-down measurement estimate for some source categories and a bottom-up measurement estimate or bottom-up inventory estimate for other source categories, and then weave those together, complete with justification and evidence for why you've chosen to do it in the way that you have. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into that. Operators have to estimate the uncertainty on their inventories in order to provide meaningful comparisons. They have to extrapolate individual measurements to annual estimates to perform comparisons at representative timescales, and so on and so forth. And so what we do is we kind of help turn all that complexity into systematic workflow and consistent math
through your software and processes and stuff. Okay, so given the amount of work that it takes to get that and, turn into level 5 and, then wait until the UNEP comes back, says, thumbs up, we accept, or thumbs down, do something different, right? Given the amount of work, I can imagine your clients also say, hey, could I use this for subpart W, given that this is better than subpart W? Or, hey, this new EU reporting coming up, we've heard that they'll accept this or not. Like, are there other things, other systems out there that will accept this work?
Yeah, so we're hearing a pretty strong interest, I would even call mandate, from our customers for enabling harmonization of these different reporting methodologies. A common complaint that you hear, and it's almost a tired expression now, is multiple sets of books. And so you may have an EPA subpart W inventory, a Colorado inventory, an OGMP level 3, level 4, level 5. You may have an internal set of books that you think is even more representative. And so companies, it's a huge logistical and administrative effort to build and maintain all of these different inventories that rely on different data sets and that are used in different ways. And so if we can move to a world where we can agree on a system and an approach for estimating a company level emissions estimate for a given year or for a given production region, that's obviously very appealing to operators. So to answer your question, right now, the implementation that we built is grounded in OGMP 2.0 Veritas Pathway 3. And it's a specific implementation of those two that is proprietary to Highwood. So both Veritas Pathway 3 and OGMP provide clear guidance on what's required, but they don't specify the precise math and every single step that must be taken and exactly how you must calculate uncertainty. And so we've taken it a step further to create a specific implementation of those requirements. And we've engaged with MIQ, who has said that this approach is suitable for meeting reconciliation requirements for MIQ. We are quite sure that it'll meet the needs of EU methane regulation, although we're still awaiting guidance from the European Commission on specifically what it is that they'll be requiring. We've engaged with the Colorado regulator and have looked at pilots with the regulator there to evaluate whether, because Regulation 7 now requires companies to either adopt a top-down, bottom-up factor, a default factor, or perform their own reconciliation approach. And so we're quite confident that our approach will be suitable for the Colorado regulator as well. Subpart W is the big question mark, and obviously there's regulatory changes occurring in the US and a lot of question marks as to where that could end up. But there's no line of sight right now on alignment between Subpart W and OGMP and some of these other initiatives, but it would be nice to see that in the future.
Okay, so you got this early adopter group, 8 of them went through, put all the stuff in, turned in their OGMP, waiting for results. Assuming everybody passes, yes, you passed that milestone. Where do you see things kind of going, over the next couple of years? I mean, you alluded to the fact that there is no harmony amongst these required, emissions inventories. And then, of course, before we started this, I was giving you the whole rundown about what the energy traders actually require under ISO 14067 and ISCC, which is on a whole nother system. Do you see, I hope, that these systems starting to converge at all? Or
I really hope so. I mean, differentiated gas has been kind of a buzzword for quite a few years now, and we've seen a lot of supply of differentiated gas or certificates emerge, but they haven't been selling at a premium. And I know there are exceptions to that, as you and I have discussed. But what I would love to see is a strong demand signal from the market that low methane natural gas is trusted and preferred and paid for, because there is a huge discrepancy between operators who are taking this really seriously, investing tens or hundreds of millions of dollars into decarbonizing their energy production, and those who aren't. And some operators are years and years and billions of dollars ahead of others, and those operators, in my opinion, should be rewarded for the good work that they're doing. So there's a lot of conversations happening around, why this is, why we haven't seen markets really develop yet for differentiated gas. But I'm hoping that with some of these more empirical based protocols, the development of additional standards, more specific requirements, with the EU methane rule likely landing in some kind of certification approach for supply chain tracking and ensuring provenance from specific producers, and with growing interest from buyers, maybe operating data centers, other buyers of natural gas that we've discussed, being able to calculate and see an ROI of sourcing lower methane natural gas, and potentially reducing the requirement for purchasing offsets. When some of that starts to happen, I think we're definitely going to be in a better place for incentivizing emissions reduction from the energy sector. I'm hoping that the next year, especially with the EU methane rule, is going to be pivotal in that regard, because if all of the buyers, both internationally and domestically, country level and corporate, are competing for some of the same quote-unquote certificates or attestations of evidence of methane molecules, we could see a real market emerge where the demand exceeds the supply of these molecules.
Excellent. Well, so just in kind of closing then, you just went through this phase, everybody got the thing turned in. I'm sure it was a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears to get all that done. But now someone's listening to this and saying, hey, I think I would love help or something like that. Well, who would you be looking for, and who could you help, and why should they sort of engage with Highwood?
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to chat with anyone, really. We're still in a learning phase. As I said, we launched EIP in January. We've been doing OGMP, Veritas, MIQ, Inventories, and consulting for years. So Highwood has really landed as a leader in that space. And frankly, it's all we do these days. We've really positioned ourselves well there. So, I mean, we've seen it all in the US, in different parts of the world. We've got the consultants who have done the work. We've got scars to show for all the learnings that we've done through that. And frankly, not every company is ready to be at level 5, automating everything and building out inventories. There's a lot of prep work that needs to be done in terms of establishing the right sorts of data, making sure that you're acquiring the right measurements, making sure that you have systems in place for managing the data, and so on and so forth. So we really can help companies from the very beginning through to the end of that process. Where we really specialize and excel is on the reconciliation process and building out the measurement-informed inventories. And we're going to have some case studies emerging over the next few months here that I'm really excited to share on how things have gone through our initial kind of OGMP reporting cycle with EIP. So happy to talk to anyone who's internationally, who as an operator, who's thinking about moving from more generic inventories to measurement-based inventories. One of the things that we found is a lot of operators already have a lot of the data that they need, and they can derive a ton of value relatively quickly. We recently did a pilot with a super major in one basin, and we had them they had all the data in good condition. We had them up and running in a couple of weeks and looking at fully reconciled measurement-informed inventories in no time. And they were like, this is really a no-brainer. We've had all this data for years. It's great to be able to plug it in and derive these new insights on what our inventories look like from a measurement perspective. So we've seen a lot of that. We have clients who are just quote unquote shadowing OGMP, who haven't made the decision yet to join, but want to be ready to comply at level 5 if they do join, and want to be able to get there right away, especially if they're faced with meeting EU methane rule requirements for importers on a short time scale. And so that's another area that we can support and strategizing kind of how to approach this, because frankly, it's a lot of work and it takes years, and none of this is solved yet. I don't think anybody is claiming to have completely solved the problem. We're going to be learning and improving and collaborating for many years to come on how to do this.
Excellent. Well, listen, I look forward to revisiting when you get those case studies out, and maybe we could do another episode where you can walk through some of those case studies. That'll be excellent. So anyway, thanks, Thomas. Appreciate getting to do another one of these, one of these episodes together. And, I know we did stuff when I had Digital Roughnecks and other webinars, so it's kind of fun to do it in this new series. So thanks again.
Thanks so much, Mark. Really appreciate you having me.
The Empirical Energy Podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.